Um, Hi, welcome to Redacted Nuisance, this weird little 10 to 15 minutes of a podcast that is recorded in one take, unedited, and put up onto internet without ever being listened to by the person who's doing it. Think of it as like a weird art project as well as a podcast. Um, and I wanted to. By the way, I'm Dr. J, use they as a pronoun. This would also have been called Queer Nuisance. But because of the censorship that LGBTQ faces in various medias and places like that, I've called it redacted nuisance. What that also means is that anyone who is listening in a space where they may not be comfortable with the word queer, in a space where they may not be comfortable having somebody see that they listen to something called queer nuisance, by calling it redacted nuisance, they can get a sense of being able to connect with another queer uh, in some way, and also put things out. Am I thinking anyone is listening to this? Am I fuck? I'm assuming that I will put these out, and at some point in time, and there will be some little um, researcher who goes, "Oh my god, I found this very weird." 50 or 60 or God only knows how many of these there will be, little 15-minute rants, and God only knows where they came from. Where did they come from? I used to do a radio show for Trans Radio UK called, believe it or not, Queer Nuisance. What a surprise. I do branding. Called Queer Nuisance. What I found was that uh, life happened, mental health happened, and I was unable to continue building the radio show, not because I didn't want to do the radio show, but because the admin and putting a show together and thinking about music and trying to fit things down into an exact time format was really more than I could handle. And while I loved putting these little rant bits in, there was more than I could handle to do the other parts. So that's also why I created this, because it is the rants that used to be within the radio show just on their own. I haven't gone back and grabbed stuff from the radio show because a lot of stuff is of its time. Um, there's been a big break in these, or a break. I don't know how big it was. There was a time break between the releasing of some episodes and now. Um, and some of that, or much of that, was because mental health. Mental health plays a big thing when you're a queer in the world. Um, I have complex PTSD, and I am having to find ways to explain that to people, which is really hard. And in trying to explain it to people, I'm also having to explain it to myself and deal with it myself. There is nothing like trying to deal with the fact that your brain is so permanently damaged by the experiences you've been through that some of this will continue to just be there for the rest of my life. There are some things that I flare up, and when they flare up, my coping mechanisms are overwhelmed. And there are some things that just on a normal day, there's stuff that I have to deal with that very few other people may need to deal with. And that's a hard realization, that just living in the world has become a bit more difficult. Um, and for some people, it's hard to understand. So today, I'm I'm pondering. I'm pondering what is complex PTSD and if I can describe it. Um, this is me thinking out loud about some of the stuff that I'm needing to sort out. So at work, they sometimes call this rubber ducking, where you talk to an imaginary person or a rubber duck on the bench while you sort stuff out, because and this is to tie in a little bit of Noam Chomsky and language theories and things like that. You having the thought putting the thoughts together puts the words together. Um, I am a talk to thinker. There are some people who think to talk. I'm a little bit more on the talk to think. My brain, in talking about something, my brain will often find the right expression or the right nuance, or I will start to form an idea playing around with language, and then I will suddenly go, ah, yes, that's exactly what I wish to say. So, welcome to a little bit of a ride on the rubber duck wagon today. Um, I would describe, how does complex PTSD feel like to me? There's a couple of things that I find that I've got that are there. There are some things that are there all the time, and there are some things that are there when I'm feeling anxious or scared or anything like that, when there's big emotions going on. So when I'm calm and everything, no matter how calm I feel, there is still a hypervigilance going on from me. I am that canary in the mine. I am, my brain is on constant alert for danger. And that's quite exhausting. And I have to say, as a visibly non-binary person, now when I say visibly non-binary, I dress like, and I used to say a children's TV entertainer, but given that half of them had turned out, or more than half of them turned out to be fucking pedophiles, um, I try to avoid saying that. But I dress with style and panache, and with no care whatsoever towards your notion of what is acceptable patternings, what is acceptable mixes of patterns, that you should not put particular colours together. If it clashes, I look at it and go, does this clash in a way that brings me joy? And if it does, I'm wearing it. So I am somebody that when people look at me, I'm also difficult to tell. I don't perform androgyny. I don't aim for androgyny, but I'm confusing. My gender is confusion. People look at me and they're never quite sure whether to go sir or madam. A lot of the times people will fall for sir because I have shortish hair and a bit of a mullet. Um, and that, oh, and I wear t-shirts and shorts a lot because Kiwis. And that means that if I wish to use the bathroom in public, there is a hypervigilance that is going on, that was going on well before all of this kicked off, well before everything like that. This went on. There's an incident. Actually, I will tell you an incident. So if you heard the last one, I talked about what I dressed like, and you've just heard me discuss how I dressed. I was at Covent Garden Royal Opera House. I was on there with was it a date? I'm not sure if it was a date, but that's welcome to Sapphic. Welcome to the Sapphic world of dating. If you are dating people who are of the femme or feminine bodied persuasions, you often end up in these situations where, was this a date? Never 100% sure. A little bit like being Excel. Is this a date? Can never tell. Actually, no, Excel assumes everything is a date. I assume nothing is a date, and I'm often surprised / horrified to find out. Anyway, going to see Marriage of Figaro, taking this wonderful, lovely person who is high femme. So they are in a fabulous cocktail dress. I am in suited and booted, but colourful. And wildly mixing colours and ties and everything. Blonde hair. It's not green like it is at the moment. It is just before it starts. We've popped to the toilet for a preparatory wee before going to sit down in our seats. And I come walking out of the women's toilets with my date about a step or so behind me. We're not walking arm in arm or anything like that. And there's this gaggle of women walking towards me. And I described them at one point in Marks and Spencer's Mother of the Bride's Best, or best Sunday outfits. They are obviously a group of people come to see The Marriage of Figaro. It's a wonderful production, by the way, if you ever get a chance to see this particular production. Marriage of Figaro. And the lead person turns towards me and says in a very shocked voice, "Do you realize you have just walked out of the ladies' lavatory?" And I turn. Now, my gender and my performance of gender is such that I have a very soft face. I don't have any facial hair. I cannot grow facial hair for the life of me, no matter how much I wish to grow facial hair. My genes will not allow me to grow facial hair. My father had a little bit of facial hair. My brother has almost none. So facial hair is not something I tend towards. So I turn, and in that turning, there is almost this wave of recognition / mortification that flows up and down this group of women as they realize that I might have walked out of the correct bathroom despite the attire that I'm wearing. I might have walked out of what could have been considered the appropriate bathroom despite the suited and booted and very fabulous attire that I'm wearing. And I turn to her and I say, "I am perfectly aware of this fact." Just with a smile and a very much like, "Yes, I'm aware that I have just walked out of the women's lavatory." And there is such a wave of mortification, a wave of embarrassment, a wave of "I will be the thing that is talked about at that Women's Institute coffee morning for quite some time when they discuss going to see The Marriage of Figaro," is something that I'd like to think that I was. And that happened probably about, I think, doing my best to remember about that time, probably about 2008, 2009. Yeah, it would have been about 2008, 2009. And just that entire moment. Now, that was a relatively benign challenge of where I go to the bathroom. These days, that same challenge is often not so benign. I can end up with somebody saying to me, "Should you be in this place?" And I'm like, "Yes, I should." Now, I am, and I'm gonna say I am crippled. I walk with a stick. I find I walk like an 8-bit computer character. I can only go forwards and back, and then I have to turn to go sideways. I can't do diagonal. I can't easily do a sidestep. So I generally prefer to use the disabled toilet because the cubicles are a little bit bigger. I can move around and I don't have a tendency to fall into the wall as I'm trying to step around the door. So these days, 90% of the time will go to the disabled toilets rather than try and choose a gendered toilet. Or if I'm using a gendered toilet, I will go with a friend and go in the same queue that they have gone in, if there's not a disabled toilet nearby or a disabled or an accessible cubicle nearby. Simply because the challenges are more virulent. The challenges are stronger. They are not diffused by a little bit of humour and charm, as that one was. Me saying I am perfectly aware of that fact would not have been the end of that conversation. It would not have been an embarrassment to that group to have challenged it. She would have felt like she had the right to challenge me. And that is a lot of the difference that that has gone on, and that is that hypervigilance, that constant need to be scared when you're out in public builds up. And I'm not going to stop going out, and I definitely am not going to stop peeing because I have to. Post-menopause, you have to pee. You've got your pelvic floor, your bladder. You've just got to go pee occasionally. You sometimes have to do a safety pee because you're going to be sitting for an hour and a half. Those small things happen. It just makes that simple interaction so much more tense, and that tension builds up. And the PTSD, the complex PTSD, is just that constant, for me at the moment, in those situations is that constant worry that I'm going to end up either A, missing part of the performance, or B, having to talk to a security person and just go, look, for fuck's sakes, I'm allowed to be in this bathroom. I have the biology that suggests that I should be in this place or I should be in that place. It doesn't really matter what I choose. Neither is really right for how I feel about my gender, but I've chosen to go into this queue and I'm being respectful and polite and I'm not going to sexually harass anybody. I am just here wanting to fucking pee. And just the notion that that is a constant note underpinning every time I leave my house and then wish to go to the bathroom. And you wonder why I've got complex PTSD. You wonder why I've got this. I'll ramble more about it.